Hi everyone! Since this is going to be published on Halloween, this episode's theme is, of course, Halloween. All of our titles take place on or around the holiday, formerly known as Samhain, and there is plenty of blood and mayhem to be had. As always, let's start with a quick content warning. The following films contain scenes of graphic violence, including, but not limited to, stabbings, shootings, dead bodies arranged in grim displays, and the book we'll be discussing features the summoning of eldritch horrors, corpse disposal, the desecration of graves, violence against women, violence against animals, including descriptions of a vivisectionist's lab, and racist language used to refer to Romani people. Viewer and reader discretion is advised. Our first film is the 1978 classic, Halloween. This film features John Carpenter's immortal theme song, which is certainly a haunting and memorable riff, and the birth of Michael Myers, whose refusal to stay dead has spawned a lengthy franchise. Interestingly, fans of this film might note the fact that for a movie about a serial killer, there are actually very few on-screen deaths. By the end of the movie, we've seen Michael kill 4 people, though he also killed an attendant at a garage between scenes to acquire his signature jumpsuit. Future entries in this series become progressively bloodier, as Michael first tries to kill his sister, and then later his niece, though this is ignored in the continuity of the current Halloween series. In this first film, John Carpenter does a fantastic job of building tension throughout the movie, giving us glimpses of Michael Myers as he gradually zeroes in on our heroine, Laurie. You also see him murder his sister at the start of the film, a scene which is from Michael's point of view, making it all the more unsettling, particularly when he puts on a Halloween mask. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis, the psychiatrist who tried for years to reach Michael, then spent the rest of his life trying to make sure the evil of his former patient was locked away forever. Donald Pleasance really sells the idea that Michael is not a man, but instead an evil, perhaps unkillable force. And given his ability to drive a car in spite of never being taught, steal a gravestone, and drive to the Illinois town where he was born just in time to kill teens on Halloween night, certainly speaks to the strength of whatever force compels him. Obviously, this is a film that does not explore why Michael is the way he is. He simply kills his sister, then escapes a psychiatric facility on Devil's Night many years later to kill Laurie Strode, who we later learn is Michael's younger sister. She was adopted, thus the different last name. Following the monster movie boom of the 1930s, having the creature in your film be sympathetic isn't uncommon. The Atomic Age brought with it fears of irradiated monsters who are impossible to reason with, though some, like Godzilla and Gamera, ultimately become heroes due to their affinity for human children and/or dislike of other monsters. But the slasher genre is full of killers who wear masks and do their grim work either because they have never received treatment for abuse or because psychology has failed them. Michael Myers, from the beginning though, has been described as evil. He began as a person, and in many movies has moments where he seems to pause when reminded of his humanity. But then he adjusts his mask and slowly moves forward, ready to kill again. His humanity is lost, and his very existence explores the fear that some things cannot be fixed, and some things, like death, cannot be stopped. Our second film is Halloween Kills, in theaters now. I saw this at the drive-in over in Bluegrass, and it has everything you'd expect of the latest entry in a storied horror franchise. There's more gore, a higher body count, and a welcome awareness on the part of some residents of Haddonfield that Michael Myers is something that needs to be dealt with. Unfortunately, the mob that attempts to kill him seems to take for granted that he has simply gotten lucky before, in escaping death by gunshot, fire, explosion, etc. And the mob is as scary as Michael is in this film, particularly when an innocent man is mistaken for Michael Myers and chased through the hospital. As a viewer, in acknowledging that at this point Michael Myers is an immortal, unkillable force that kills wherever he goes, I would have preferred a scene in which Michael is trapped and then encased in cement and imprisoned in some kind of bunker where he might be guarded around the clock. Of course, he'd escape in the inevitable third chapter of this trilogy, the second that one of the guards drops their, well, guard. Overall, though, I enjoyed the way this movie brought back characters from the original and imagined their lives 40 years later, after the trauma of the 1978 film, and then, well, abruptly kills off most of them. Our book this time is A Night in the Lonesome October, which conveniently features a chapter for every day in October. Snuff is a dog that lives with Jack, and the two of them, along with several other players, are engaged in a game that will end on Halloween night. Preparations for this event include the collection of necessary items, which at times involves grave robbing and, depending on the player, murder. It's also important to decide what you can say to fellow players. Snuff often cooperates with other creatures involved, usually the familiars of humans, though he chooses his words carefully, and they often trade information about who is doing what and where. The Count, for example, becomes a problem when it's revealed that he may have more than one grave he's been sleeping in. The game is played every October, in which the full moon falls on Halloween, and following the death of the moon in mid-October, the game becomes increasingly deadly. Snuff has to work to dispose of a corpse prior to this anyway. The humans involved, and their animal familiars, seek to avoid detection, though between the presence of the great detective and the fact that the ritual they're preparing for must take place in a spot between the players' homes makes this almost impossible. Still, Snuff mostly cooperates with the cat Greymalk, the snake Quicklime, the owl Nightwind, and other creatures whose masters are players, or perhaps not. There are a couple people who are in question for most of the book, and it does complicate Snuff's attempts to calculate where the Halloween night festivities will take place. Snuff doesn't tell anyone everything, and in exchange he has valuable information to trade, like the lines between players' homes and how that will affect where the way is opened on Halloween, or if it will be opened at all. There are openers and closers here, and then there are people like Larry Talbot, whose complete loss of self on the night of the full moon will make him hard to account for. This novel is an entertaining tribute to classic horror, which you may have picked up on in terms of references to the Count, Dracula, and Larry Talbot, which is the human name for the Wolfman. And while Arthur Conan Doyle might not love that his most famous creation is still so beloved after over a century in fiction, his interactions with the other characters here make for a delightful Halloween mystery, with just a touch of eldritch horror. Of course, the way they're trying to open here is to let the elder gods return to this world. H.P. Lovecraft was a terrible racist, so by all means, let's support authors and creators like Jordan Peele and the novelist here, the late Roger Zelazny, who reimagined Lovecraftian ideas. This book was written in the 90s, though, thus my warning about language regarding Romany people. I'd never heard of this book before this year, but among some, it's an annual tradition to reread it each October, and I look forward to doing the same in future Octobers. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another terrifying trio.